like I was
This
saying, yeah,
is video number 2 now.
Of moms.
Being moms
First time
to our
moms.
kids after we were abused.
Yes. And I honestly, I have 2 other stepchildren from my first marriage. And they were very little when I came into their life. And I have to say, my mother-in-law being very strict from her culture, the Middle East culture, her being very strict made me the opposite way with them to an extent where I feel like I wasn't as hardcore with them as I was with Parker, because I was trying to balance it out. So I feel like they got a little bit more of a fair shake when it came to that. But at the same time, I was very strict with them too. Very, very, very strict.
For you to say that, that's really interesting, because now I'm thinking to myself, would I consider myself abusive? Because I was a very strict parent.
I would say it depends on what kind of things would come out of your mouth when you don't have control of your body. And I swear.
So would that then be determined by what my children remember?
Correct. It'd be how your children perceived you. Because when I yell at Wyatt and I, do what I did with Parker to Wyatt, Wyatt thinks it's funny and he laughs now. But Parker is very sensitive. So when I would say things to Parker, I mean, it's different now because I don't react to Wyatt that way. So Wyatt responds to me differently because I've told him, don't let anybody abuse you like that. Just like I apologized to Parker and said, don't let anybody abuse you like that. But Parker will be more susceptible to abuse like that from his wife because he experienced it from me. And it was okay for him to get yelled and screamed at and told that, he's doing things wrong and he's doing them wrong. Why can't you just do it the right way? I just don't understand. How many times do I have to show you the right way to do it? And when you're screaming and F-bombing and in somebody's personal space, screaming at them, that's abuse. That's verbal abuse. I wouldn't like somebody doing that to me. And if somebody did that to me, I would clock them in the face. And because he was smaller and a child, he couldn't clock me in the face. So that makes me not an abuser.
So no. I can think of a handful of times where one child, as a teenager, pushed my buttons that far.
Yeah.
So, you're right. I was the adult. I should have had better control of my emotions. And should not have lost my shit.
Yeah.
And that's right.
Yeah.
That is verbal abuse.
Yeah.
Not that I intended it to be.
Correct.
But it was.
Yeah. And that's how I look at it. Yeah. And that's really the whole, I'm telling you, 2012 just slapped my face with.
Damn.
It really made me analyze every aspect of my life, maybe put everything into perspective. It really made me have to be vulnerable and aware that I am not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And I
Right.
do messed up things all the time. I try not to. I try to be, but, when I realized that, I would have to say I realized that maybe right before the pandemic hit. I realized that that was the way Parker and I communicated, was not good and healthy for us. And we had to sit down, him and I had to sit down, and we had to come to a compromise and a understanding that when either one of us started to get to that point where we were not in control of ourselves, that we were not going to be abusive to one another. We were going to step away, and we were going to get back in control of ourselves. And then we would come back and talk about it and reanalyze it and see what it was, because pretty much all it was Parker thought I said something. I didn't say, or I did say that, but I didn't mean it the way he took it. And he took it wrong because I was maybe short tone of voice, my body language was off, I was in a pissy mood or whatever it was. He was very sensitive to my body language and my tone of voice. And when I said something, if I said it very coarse or very crude, it didn't matter that there was a please or whatever in it. He just, it would insulted him, and he would go off, why
Well,
are you talking?
I'm happy that I can see that and acknowledge that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also happy that it didn't go any further than that
Yes,
for
yes, because
for
it
me.
yes,
Because I really, when I raised my kids, I really was very, I felt like I was very careful in everything I said because I knew what it felt like.
the impact it had.
Right. I knew what words, how words had such power and such kick behind them.
Yes.
Um, and so I always felt like I was careful in choosing my words and how I spoke to my kids. And, um, I mean, like when my oldest daughter first asked me, how come your name is different on my birth certificate than on the rest of everybody's birth certificate? Like, even then, having to figure out how to use my words carefully. And so I just feel all
Yeah.
I've always had to be careful, but definitely there have been times.
Yep.
But this child, I have to tell you, is just like me.
And isn't it
Like,
amazing?
we did a DNA test on Ancestry, some of my children and me. She has the most DNA strands just like me. That is how much like me she is.
Yes, yes.
So
And
of
isn't it?
course she got sworn at.
Yep, yep. Well, that's what I was just gonna say. Isn't it hysterical and so funny how, so like, each child has their own personality, and Parker tested my, um you can't tell me what to do. I don't care what you say. And he was very finger up in the air kind of thing. Um, and of course, me, coming from that or whatever, triggered me differently. Where Alex is very tender hearted. Not that Parker isn't tender hearted, but Parker doesn't come at you like that. Where Alex is very shy, very tender hearted, very um soft. I guess is, he's very boyish, but like, he's just very soft spoken. He's not all up in your face. Um
So he's not like your third.
Yes, he's not the youngest. Exactly. Yes, he is very, Alex is just so tenderhearted, and his emotions are written on his face. So you can hurt him and you can see it on his face. And so Alex doesn't trigger those same triggers that Parker triggered.
That's
Um,
that's what I mean when I say every child is parented by different parents.
yes, yes. Alex I feel very protective of, and very like, I don't let the boys pick on Alex so much because he's very soft. And I don't want that to sound bad, because it's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful
He's
thing.
just tender-hearted.
Yes, tenderhearted. There you go. That's the word to use. And then the youngest,
Follow me from her tips.
yeah, and the youngest is a comedian, and he thinks he's funny, and he cracks a joke at everything, and he can irritate me like no tomorrow, and at the same time he irritates me, he can get me to laugh so hard that I fart and it's all done and over with. Like, I'm just like, you just have to leave. Like, I can't do this anymore. My face hurts when I'm done hanging out with him for a while, because he has me laughing so hard, but he makes me so mad at the same time. I want to throw something at him. And so his reaction, or the things that, I parent him totally different. He's the kind of kid you can't let him get away with anything. He comes and picks on you or says something, you have to right away nip it in the bud. Otherwise, you're lost, girl. And I'm also, Parker, I was the more strict about, things have to be done a certain way, period, end of conversation, my way or the highway. And where it comes with the younger ones, you know what? You think you have a better way to do it? By all means, go ahead and do a better way. I don't care, as long as it gets done to my standard. If you can do it your way and get it done to my standard, by all means, babe, do your thing. And that has saved so much.
When do you think that you stopped being militant?
When Parker told me that I treat them differently,
How old were they?
Parker was 19.
Oh,
Wyatt and Alex were, well, they were 12,
not
11
that
and
long
12.
ago.
No, no. That's why, like, Parker and I, like this, him um moving out, and uh the process of him moving out and all of that has actually brought us so much closer, because I've been able to say and talk about, um, like, apologize to him. I didn't, you triggered me. And now, for an example, this last Christmas, if anybody would have told me 4 years ago or 3 years ago or even 2 years ago that Parker would have been able to calm me down and talk me from going spazzo, I would have laughed crazy. But no, he picked me up from the house or whatever and took me, I don't remember what it was, to get something, or something I've forgotten or something. And he calmed me down, and I started laughing, and I said, who would have thought Parker going to calm me down? He goes, I know. I know. He goes, but I realize that you're not saying this to be personally attacking me. And I was like, I love you so much, Parker, right now,
Oh,
for understanding that. And it was just a communication, understanding, so he doesn't take it personally when I get like that anymore, because I was able to go, I'm so sorry for being abusive, because it really did hurt him. It hurt him that I was abusive like that. And, you
mm.
know, I threw a candle at his head. That's abuse. That's
Ooh.
straight up abuse. Like, that's if that had been done to me, I would have been like devastated.
Yeah.
And so being able to admit those things to him, be aware of those things, not just admit, because that's not really being about being able to admit. It's about being aware, because a lot of times you do things you're not even aware of the damage you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so being aware of the damage was very helpful and very wonderful. And it has opened up my communication um, with him on a totally different level that I never thought could be possible. And it has opened up the communication with my younger kids because I now say to them, if I talk like this to you, please gently let me know that that is something I'm doing. And if I'm not aware of it, I will try to correct myself. But don't let anybody, it's almost like I'm teaching them to stand up for themselves in a very correct, you know what I mean?
That's
Don't
really good. I taught my kids that too. Like, I mean, later after I don't know what, I don't even know what year it was or how old they were, but at some point I realized that something, and it was okay. I taught them it was okay. Like, it's okay, parents make mistakes too, and so it's
Mhm.
okay. Like if I'm, being oh, ridiculously emotional and I'm yelling for no reason, it's okay for you to just softly say, "Hey, mom,
Yeah,
you don't need to yell.
I'm
We're
right here.
all here." And they have,
Yeah,
and they still do.
yeah.
And
I
and
think that
and,
just,
and it's like a, oh wow, oh, okay,
yeah. Well, the other thing too is we were not in normal society.
yeah,
So our social cues are not
yeah,
normal. The way we interpret something is not normal. And
hmm,
with Wyatt going to school and Wyatt being out in the world, he had those social cues that I didn't have. And I almost learned from him what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable the older he got, because he would say, Mom, you're a little crazy. And I'd be like, oh, okay, that's not normal. Oh, okay, all right. Um, so that was part of it too. Me not being aware of my social,
ineptitude.
yes, yes. And, on both cases, on all the kids. And now it's gotten, like now like Wyatt is 15, and I am able to say to him, well, what would you do if you were in this situation? Or so it's almost like with me giving them permission to say, hey, you're abusing me, or this is abusive behavior, I don't want any part of it. That's me acknowledging them as a human being. That's me acknowledging them as a person, and they have a right in this space just as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And us as kids growing up, we didn't have that.
Yeah.
And when it came to me being even in my adopted family, I didn't feel like I just had that. I had to fight for that. And once I got it, I kept it, but I had to keep fighting for it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
when it came to the last couple of years with the kids, and me realizing that Parker was a trigger, and me realizing all of these other things, I think I've opened my home to, you are part of this home. Your person is part of this home, and you have equal rights to this home, just like I do. And nobody anywhere is able to treat you that way, and you have the right. So it's opened up our communication, to even the point where they kind of tease me for being, oh, well, you're really going to hurt my feelings. So like, I know I've kind of taken it to the other, extreme sometimes, and I have to kind of pull it back. But they're old enough to understand that and gauge that. So I don't have to be too aware of that because they're older
Like,
now. They were
but
young.
there are things that were, I'm thinking about that were, while we're talking, I'm thinking about like things I did for punishments for my kids that I'm sure other people would find fault with. I mean, like, I didn't whip my kids. I didn't beat them and stuff like that. But I did things like they had to do wall sits
Mhm.
or
Penny
put their
the
nose on the
wall.
wall.
Oh, we did a penny.
I
Put a
didn't
penny
I didn't do that.
on the wall. And if his nose left the wall or if the penny dropped to the ground, he started all over. He used
Like,
to cry and ask me, Mama, will you please spank me? Mama, will you please whoop me? Mama, please whoop me. Please, Mama. Because he hated standing on the wall. That was the worst thing ever. He would ask for a spanking.
when my son started in whatever grade it is where they start doing wall sits in football, he won the challenge. And he was like, you don't even know.
Yeah.
My mom used to make me do these.
Yes. Now,
And people probably would find fault with that, but I also felt like I had this fine line where I didn't want to I had to raise children who were going to be upstanding, productive members of society. Without being abusive to them. Do you know what I'm saying? Because
yes.
I came from such an extremely abusive background, but then I was parallel parenting with an entity who had absolutely no rules and did absolutely everything opposite that I wanted. So in my home, I had to have rules and I had to have structure and I had to have things a certain way. Otherwise, I wouldn't have productive children at all right now.
Yes. Yes.
And so, I don't know. I do feel bad for, my oldest. There are things that I wish I could go back and redo with my oldest.
Would you redo or would you just make it softer?
Yeah, I'd make it softer.
Yeah.
Like
I told Parker, I said, Parker, I apologize to him immensely because I'm like, you got the harsh me.
Because there are things that I didn't allow her to do, or I was really steadfast in holding certain lines on certain rules for her. And then when her siblings came along, I let those lines kind of start graying.
Yeah.
And allowed them. And I can see where she is resentful because of that. And I don't know if it's because I got older and started picking my battles.
I think you just were aware that your red lines before were not.
Yeah, they were too harsh.
It really just doesn't matter, and it's not worth the energy and the effort you're putting into it. It's a waste of energy, and you have better energy. You know what I mean? Where first time around, you just didn't know.
But my first kid made it through 4 years of college.
Mm-hmm.
It took her a really long time, but she's productive and she, got a degree and
Yep.
I mean, she has she has suffered and been rejected by her biological father. She's, you know,
I think that children, when we raise children, as long as the parents are able to understand, apologize, and be aware that they're not perfect, that children, like, for example, me being able to apologize to Wyatt and my kids for being the way I am, or say, I know I'm not perfect. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can right now with the knowledge and the tools that I have. And I am well aware that in 5 years from now, they'll probably say that I'm abusing you. I understand that. I hear you. Unfortunately, this is what I know. So this is what I have to go by. So this is what we're going to do. And so with me being able to say that now, I wasn't able to say that before. But even with my biological parents coming to me after the fact, when they came to me with an apologetic, and I know we did harm and that kind of thing, there wasn't resentment. And there was, I'm glad that you are aware. And, like Parker, I'm really glad that Wyatt and Alex aren't going to experience you doing that to them. Because I really did hurt Parker's feeling. I really did. Like, really, Parker took that shit really personally. And I did damage. And I want him to be fully aware that I'm aware that I did that damage. And now, because I did that damage, he is more susceptible to a woman or getting into a relationship with a woman and him being okay with her screaming at him like that. And that's not okay. It's not okay for anybody to do that to you.
Yeah.
Wife, husband, sibling, mother, anybody. It's not okay. And he's more susceptible to that. And, the only way that I can make sure that my fault is kind of corrected is by making him aware that he's susceptible to that and helping him
This is really good. This has been pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, I try really hard, well, he has a girl that he really likes, and I'm like, Parker, as long as you're able to communicate with her and tell her honestly what you feel inside, then you can have a good relationship. But if you can't tell her what you truly feel inside, it will never work, because
we're going to take another break. We'll come back with 3.
Okay.